Who would have believed that out there in the vast clamor of the internet, those endless videos, all that noise, one earnest-looking professor standing at a podium could make 10 million people so far stop and listen.
Wait long enough and people will surprise and impress you.
The last lecture, an annual tradition at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, a speech on personal philosophy by a beloved professor, like Randy Pausch, famous for making his students believe in themselves no matter the obstacles in their way.
The brick walls are there for a reason. Right? The brick walls are not there to keep us out. The brick walls are there to give us a chance to show how badly we want something. Because the brick walls are there to stop the people who don't want it badly enough. They're there to stop the other people.
So your goals are possible if you get tough with yourself and face difficult truths. Professor Pausch was a scrawny kid in junior league football under a tough coach named Jim Graham.
There was one practice where he just rode me, all practice. Just, you're doing this wrong, go back and do it again, you owe me, you're doing push-ups after practice. And when it was all over, one of the other assistant coaches came over and said, yeah, Coach Graham rode you pretty hard, didn't he? I said, yeah. He said, that's a good thing. He said, when you're screwing up and nobody's saying anything to you anymore, that means they gave up. And that's a lesson that stuck with me my whole life, is that when you see yourself doing something badly and nobody's bothering to tell you anymore, that's a very bad place to be. Your critics are your ones telling you they still love you and care.
For 90 minutes, he gives lessons about living.
We cannot change the cards we are dealt, just how we play the hand.
And about facing death.
In case there's anybody who wandered in and doesn't know the backstory, my dad always taught me when there's an elephant in the room, introduce them.
At the lecture, some of his friends know, but others are just learning, that he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it has spread.
If you look at my CAT scans, there are approximately 10 tumors in my liver, and the doctors told me 3 to 6 months of good health left. That was a month ago, so you can do the math. If I don't seem as depressed or morose as I should be, sorry to disappoint you. And I assure you, I am not in denial. And the other thing is, I'm in better shape than most of you. So anybody who wants to cry or pity me can come down and do a few of those, and then you may pity me.
So don't try to tell Randy Pausch not to love the life he has left.
Right. So my next piece of advice is, you just have to decide if you're a Tigger or you're an Eeyore. I think I'm clear where I stand on the great Tigger-Eeyore debate.
1 month after the lecture, October 2007, we decide to go to Pittsburgh for an interview with Dr. Pausch. We're in the library of his beloved Carnegie Mellon, where ostensibly he was a teacher of computer science, virtual reality, creating a whole program for the school with Professor Don Marinelli. But long before his illness, Professor Pausch says he thought the students needed something more.
How do you behave with integrity? How do you behave in a way that other people will respect you and want to keep working with you? If I only had 3 words of advice, they would be, tell the truth. If I got 3 more words, I'd add, all the time. I'll tell you right now, if there's anything I've learned in my career, a lot of people don't want the truth. A lot of people just want to be patted and stroked and told how wonderful they are.
So in effect, he dared his students to love the truth about themselves. They even handed each other report cards on character issues like teamwork. Next up, lessons about fearlessness.
And the kid said, well, what content do we make? I said, hell, I don't know. You make whatever you want. 2 rules, no shooting violence and no pornography. And you'd be amazed how many 19-year-old boys are completely out of ideas when you take those off the table.
We went to him and said, we have a couple of ideas. This idea here is very safe. This idea here with these cell phones is very risky. He said, go for the risk. It's better to fail spectacularly than to pass along and do something which is mediocre.
Student Phil Light, who says Professor Pausch even created an award for the most glorious failure.
What's the old saying? You can always tell the pioneers by the arrows in their backs.
Through the years, some of Randy Pausch's students balked. Most of them soared.
Such an awesome, awesome once-in-a-lifetime kind of teacher.
It became this underground thing. I'd walk into a class with 50 students in it, and there were 95 people in the room. And people's roommates and friends and parents. I'd never had parents come to class before.
It was like something I'd never seen before. It was unbelievable.
Jared Cohen is president of Carnegie Mellon.
Here at Carnegie Mellon, we don't have big-time sports. But when I walked in the room, I felt like I'd walked into a pep rally for a major football game.
So it was a thrilling time for Randy Pausch. And then one day, he felt tired, thought maybe he had a kind of flu.
A little bit weak, a little bit bloated feeling. I eventually got yellow skin jaundice and itching, and we had originally thought I had hepatitis.
An ultrasound, a CAT scan, a life changed in a sentence.
And he said, Randy, there's a mass on your pancreas. And he said, and it's not fair. Don't think it's unfair. We all stand on the dartboard, and a very small percentage of us are going to catch the dart labeled pancreatic cancer. And I was unlucky, but it wasn't unfair. Pancreatic cancer is pretty much the most fatal cancer of all. It is ruthless, it is brutal, very few people beat it, and there are a lot of reasons for that. It's an internal organ that's sort of wrapped in other stuff.
Only 15 to 20% of pancreatic cancer patients have any early symptoms.
I was lucky in that my tumor pressed on the bile duct. You don't get enough bile into your system, you can't digest your food as well. And not to be crass about this, but the telltale sign is that your stools in the toilet bowl start to float and become less dense. And what this means is that you're not digesting fats because you're not getting the bile into your system.
There was massive surgery to remove a third of his pancreas, parts of his stomach, a crushing blast of chemotherapy and radiation. Crushing for body, not spirit.
I remember once my doctor asked me, so are you feeling depressed? And I said, well, compared to an average 46-year-old, probably, but compared to a guy who just had his insides carved out, who's in tremendous physical pain, and who's being told that he has a way less than 50-50 chance of living to 5 years, I think I feel pretty good. And so he just turned to the intern and said, write down, not depressed.
But 8 months after the surgery, the cancer had come back. A dedicated Tigger had to reach inside himself again.
I've never found anger to make a situation better, and right now I've got a finite amount of time, and I can spend that time angry, or I can spend that time doing something productive and worthwhile and having fun. I don't know how to not have fun, right? I'm dying and I'm having fun.
He tells me he's trying an experimental vaccine, and so far chemotherapy has slowed the progress of the disease.
And that typically holds on for a couple of months. So I may have just doubled my lifespan, and, well, you try doing that.
He told me one of his favorite philosophical sources is that famous newspaper editor's letter, the one assuring the little girl Virginia there is a Santa Claus.
The editor's letter about your little cynical friends live in a cynical age. You say there is no evidence and you can't see, but can you see love? Can you see hope? These are the most important things, and you can't see them or touch them.
Did you ever see fairies dancing on the lawn? Of course not, but that's no proof they're not there.
That's right. There's no scientist in the world that can tell you there aren't fairies on the lawn.
Back at the lecture, sitting in the audience, his wife, mother of their 3 children. The children he worries he will not be around to protect.
We're not going to talk about my wife, we're not talking about my kids, because I'm good, but I'm not good enough to talk about that without tearing up. There is a sadness that comes when I think about my kids, and it's not so much I won't get the experience of being a dad. I mean, that's sad, but the really strong emotions for me are they won't have me for them. And that's where it's okay for me to say that's not fair. The metaphor I've used is somebody's going to push my family off a cliff pretty soon, and I won't be there to catch them, and that breaks my heart. But I have some time to sow some nets to cushion the fall, and that seemed like the best and highest use of my time. So I can curl up in a ball and cry, or I can get to work on the nets.
Time now for our first interview to end. But before I can go, the professor stops me to critique what I've done.
There's one question you didn't ask me.
Which one?
About people keep asking about making a movie out of my life.
Wait, you do your part and my part. This is the best interview I've ever had. Okay. Yes, a movie.
Can't be done. No Hollywood actress is pretty enough to play my wife.